When you hear that bell, you know you are in the championship rounds with the one and only King Amin of Essex. And I've been dying. I got to tell you guys, ladies and gentlemen, when you're a fighter, you need great sparring. You got to bring in great sparring or else you cannot get sharp. So I got my guy, Ray the Business, here joining me today so we can get some work, man. We need that work, Ray. What's going on, brother?
What's up, my man? What a great metaphor.
Oh, you know it, man. Iron sharpens iron, man. And I know you doing your thing out here. Tell everybody where they can find you.
What's up, guys? You can find me at The Business TV on YouTube and then at Ray the Business on Instagram.
All right, listen. Let's get right to it, man. A lot of blowback. The heavyweight division, I mentioned yesterday, the heavyweight division, we need the heavyweight division whenever the welterweight's not acting right, the little guy's not acting right, the big guys put things in perspective. The outcome of Usyk and AJ yesterday. Give me your thoughts about, number one, the outcome and how this bout puts the rest of the division into perspective.
Yeah, typically we don't want to, we wouldn't work in reverse when analyzing a fight like this. I mean, sometimes, you talk about with there's a knockout, something like that, but it goes even further than that in the sense of what was AJ doing? I don't understand. What was that? Was that a mental breakdown? Did he just lose the plot? Was he taking the piss, as they would say over there? I don't know what to think of it, man. I seen people on Twitter talking about, well, at least he didn't claim that his trainer drugged him and this and that, and I don't like either of them. You know what I mean? Like either like reactions to losing, man. I feel like maybe this guy's had a huge ego. I don't know. I can't speak for the man,
Sure.
But maybe he's just had a huge ego. Maybe he's had everybody feeding his ego. And then when things happen in your life, just in general, and you fail, if there's excuses to fall back on, then you don't really necessarily learn the lesson. So when he fought Andy Ruiz and lost, at least he could say, well, I wasn't training right, and there was excuses to be made, and in the promo of the rematch, those excuses were made. Whether they wanted to call them excuses or not. For this fight, I don't know that I heard necessarily excuses, but just in general too, I always feel like when you change your trainer, that's a way of inadvertently taking accountability off your own plate and your own shoulders. So he changes his trainer, goes in with a similar game plan, and wasn't able to execute it. But now it's one of those things where he can't go back and right this wrong. This was his chance of redemption, and he wasn't able to do it. So I think in his mind and from his own words, he just doesn't know what to think of it. He was sitting there saying, "Oh, I worked so hard for this." Mate, you could do all the sit-ups in the world and all the rounds in the world, but if you're not better than him tactically, you're not going to win.
So I got some mixed feelings about this match. I definitely can respect the decision. I hate when sometimes in our perspective we detract from the winner. So first I got to say Usyk is the man.
Yeah, real quick, let me add to that.
Sure.
It's there was so much shenanigans with AJ that it's like nobody's talking about Usyk.
Yeah, and that's kind of the key to, I think, what fails AJ and also keeps him winning. I think for all the skill he has, there's something lacking in the will. Whether that's something that he just recently lost or something that's always been lacking, I think this was the most glaring revelation of that. Man, when I watched him, I sat there quietly, literally in silence, because I'm listening, and I heard a lot of retirement talk because he started comparing himself to fighters of an era. Whenever somebody start doing that, they like. But then I also thinking he's still a fighter, because for all the fights that he's got up for and even lost, he's still in there. He's still willing. So I said to myself, this is either a swan song or he's calling for a swan song with Deontay Wilder. I think he's the kind of guy that'll, he knows how to take a loss business-wise, but emotionally, he still is struggling with how to take a loss. Yeah, and Usyk, on the other hand, man, Usyk creates an interesting dialogue because remember what he said was, if it's not Fury, then he's retiring.
It's nobody.
So how do we get the rest of this division sorted out? I mean, I got a couple fights in mind. I still like, if Joshua's truly on his way out and this is his swan song, salute to him. Let 258 management be what it is. Maybe he can allow some other fighters to eat that money he was eating up, right? But if he has one more left in him, I wouldn't mind him and Daniel Dubois, since Daniel Dubois is a young lion, domestic fight. What's left, we look at it as a last fight, I also, wouldn't mind the Wilder fight, of course. But other than that, I mean, I think this is, it was very Kanye-esque, how do you
What a
respond
way
to
to
that?
put it. What a way to put it. Yeah, it really was Kanye-esque, man. So to the first point you made in there, you talked about how, maybe his heart isn't in it 100%. And I saw that in 2019 in New York when he fought Andy Ruiz. People want to make excuses, this and that. The man quit in there. When you spit out your own mouthpiece, you're giving up. You know what you're doing, whether you want to admit it or not. So to me, I thought he quit. But and that just goes to show where's the heart really at in there. But like I said, I can't speak for the man. Now, when it comes to Usyk, man, I agree with him. Don't be fighting mandatories, none of this nonsense. If it's not Fury, like, you have so much going on in your life, with your family, with your country. You don't need to be fighting Hergovich or Daniel Dubois or whoever's the WBO mandatory. You don't need to be fighting any of that. You need to be fighting Tyson Fury, which I feel like that fight can be made. I commented on y'all's live yesterday when you were over there with Doomy, and your man's was talking about, Fury says he's retired. I said, Fury's not retired, bro.
Yeah.
He's just trying to gain more leverage, trying to get the money, and he's putting the writing on the wall himself. Every time somebody fights, he goes, I'll come in there and smash the dosser, but bring out the checkbook.
And he's right. I think in terms of what he's able to do in the heavyweight division, the problem is with either fighter, there's too much unfinished business on the table. So if Usyk goes away because Fury isn't available, or Fury says, I'm not coming back because neither one of these guys are a challenge, I think that dilutes what the heavyweight division could do. And I think in a way that freezes out a guy like Daniel Dubois, who's on the rise. You know what I'm saying? It opens the door for Deontay Wilder if he, has the will to keep going, because all of a sudden Usyk decides to sit down. His arch nemesis is out of the picture, you know? Right?
Yeah, I mean, as far as the Daniel Dubois thing goes, I'm not really, I'm not trying to downplay any fighter's accomplishments, but I felt that WBA title, interim title, or whatever it is that he holds, was given, very prematurely, especially because the WBA, that's their thing. So as far as him being a player in the division, I don't really see it yet. But as far as unfinished business between Usyk and Fury, I believe so. And I think there's a parallel right now with the welterweights too, in the sense that if that fight doesn't get made comparatively to Earl versus T-Bud, then it's just a shame for the sport. Like, I don't care what needs to happen. Obviously, when it comes to business, you always want the opportunity to say, "Hey, I'll walk away." But also, if you're selling something, which is your service, your product, it's only worth whatever somebody's willing to pay. So if nobody else is willing to pay what you're asking for, then you're not worth what you're asking for. And then you can't walk away. Like, you have to go and get this done, or else it's going to be a disservice to the sport, the fans, and it's going to taint the legacy.
Well, it's interesting you make that point. We're going to keep it in the heavyweight division for a second, because when you talk about somebody like Dubois, right?
Mm-hmm.
He loses the opportunity because whether it was premature or not, it's the WBA. You know,
Mhm.
they give you a super or regular. You know, they like Oprah. You get a WBA, I get a WBA. You know, everybody gets a WBA.
Everyone, bro.
But he's going to lose the opportunity to get validated. You know, maybe he can get in there with the rematch against Joyce, or maybe the winner of Ruiz and Ortiz. But you know, it's on the undercard. It is a Hergovic or a Zhang. Do either of those fighters give Dubois any sort of validation?
I think it clears things up a little bit. Personally, for me, I know this isn't the way boxing works. Personally, for me, I feel like the organizations should, with their mandatories, they should almost do like joint eliminators. I saw it recently, I think, with what's his name? Fundora? Wasn't he like a WBA and a WBC eliminator in the same fight, or like an interim in the same fight, something like that? And then even like WBO, WBC, they're kind of working together, but it doesn't help when you have one champion with the titles and then this organization is trying to push their mandatory. This organization is trying to push their mandatory. Have these two mandatories fight each other, and then that validates that person even further.
Yeah, no, I
Instead
agree.
of having to compete with the other person via mandatory status. I would like to see that happen. It's not a perfect world, and this is boxing at the end of the day. But to your point, I feel the best route for Dubois is he would have to beat Joyce.
Mm.
You know, if he beats Joyce, then that kind of erases that stain. Because for me, I'm somebody that, you know, I don't really forget about that type of thing. You know, we can't just go in here, win a couple fights, and it's like, oh yeah, you know, you're this guy. You know, we saw what happened in that Joyce fight, and for Joyce not to get a shot and Dubois to get a shot, what are we doing here?
Yeah. Well, speaking of what are we doing, I saw a curious decision. I want to know if you agree. That Badou Jack versus Popeye Rivera. It should have been a draw to me. It should have been a draw. Okay. I gave Badou Jack the first round, and then the rest it was Popeye. He faded late. I agree.
For
But
sure.
what do you think of that decision, man?
So I think Badou Jack could have won the first. I'm not opposed to giving Badou Jack the first round. I thought that could have went either way, but you know, a lot of the times people will be like, "Oh, this is my scorecard," and then they die on that hill of the scorecard. No, whenever I score fights, I'll put like a little asterisk next to the round because I'm like that could have went either way.
Swing rounds.
We could be looking at two different fights here. So honestly, for me, I'm a little biased in that fight. I don't know Popeye personally, but he was training and doing like the evening classes at my gym. So I was texting my gym owner about this fight, you know, telling him like the times and whatnot. So it's one of those things when he's somebody that's been in the gym, training in the gym, teaching in the gym. It's like part of that culture, even though I don't know him personally. So I'm rooting for the guy, and for him to get a shot like that when you have one guy who the experience level is here compared to here, it was night and day on experience level. And Popeye, for his unorthodox style, looked really good.
Absolutely.
You know, had he had a little more experience, especially with the endurance factor, I think that would have been a different fight. I saw him, he started kind of breathing a little bit heavy into round 4 with his mouth, and he was hiding it very well. But then in that second half of the fight, he wasn't hiding it as well. But those uppercuts up the middle, I don't think Jack was doing much at all. I think it could have went to Popeye. A draw would have been appropriate.
Sure.
But I didn't see Jack winning that fight at all.
Well, let's talk about a fight on the Lipinets Figueroa card, and I'm talking about specifically the Lipinets Figueroa fight. We didn't need any scorecards for that one. Did you happen to catch that?
So I didn't catch the end actually. Did Figueroa get stopped?
Stopped.
Yeah, which round was that? It looked like he got stopped in the 5th.
Yeah.
Whoa, I saw him get dropped. I think it was the 2nd.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you know, little heads up for your audience. I'm somebody who boxing's my first love, but I am a fan of both MMA and boxing. I know sometimes that's a little taboo to say, especially for the older boxing heads, because they come from that like boxing versus UFC in the early 2000s, late 2000s. I don't feel like there needs to be a like argument or debate between the two. I feel like they could both coexist and learn off of each other, kind of the way Eddie Hearn has that relationship with Dana White. So I'll place that in there. But that being said, I had two TVs. If you look at my story on Instagram, I had my monitor up with the boxing, and then I had the UFC on as well. And that was during the Rockhold versus Costa fight, which was just absolutely nuts. So that had my attention. And then in between rounds, I was looking over at the boxing. But the thing with Omar Figueroa and that fight in general is that fight, even if it was Broner, the fight really didn't do much for me in the sense that Broner is kind of irrelevant to the division and to the sport. He's still a character, but and so is Figueroa. He's somebody that whether they win or if they win, what's their place in the division? What's their place in the sport? It doesn't do much for me, rather other than just seeing a good fight, and it seemed like it was a good fight.
And well, I don't want to force the issue, but I will say this.
Go ahead.
I understand that Broner had the challenges he had, but boy, oh boy, if he was home watching that fight, I bet you he wish he would have just willed himself to show up. And no disrespect to Omar Figueroa, but I'm sure he wish he would have took that fight because, man, a win for Broner, not just for his confidence, not just for his brand, but for his place or for his presence in the sport. It would have been a nice opportunity. And a lot of my constituents, shout out to my man Walker Ray, a lot of people thought that this was going to be Figueroa's last stand. And seeing him retire was like, damn, what did he do in his career? He gave us a lot of exciting fights,
especially at the beginning of his career.
Especially at the beginning, but he never quite broke the ceiling to get in the discussion where we projected him to be. So, and Lipinets. Remember, Lipinets is coming in off a loss to the draw to Castillo Clayton, and then a loss to
Boots.
To Boots.
A bad loss.
Yeah, and so he's right back in the game. So
yeah.
But let's shift directions because I want to rock out with you. Leon Edwards and Kamaru Usman. This fight came down in the championship round. It came down to
the end of the championship round, bro.
So tell me, there was a discussion in the corner, and I don't want to take away from Edwards' corner, but it was a Jamaican Teddy Atlas type speech about fire and everything, man. So
why don't you look at me? Yeah, he's like, get it together, dude. He was going nuts. We're firemen. He was screaming at him too. Yeah, I liked that. He was like, what was he saying, man? He's like, get it together. Quit feeling sorry for yourself, because there was times where Edwards was against the fence and you could tell like he didn't want to be there. He did not want to be there. His body language, I'm big on body language in a fight. You know what I mean? And he did not look like he wanted to be there. And you know what I'll say adversely in the corner of Usman, that was the reason why Usman lost. I have huge respect for Trevor Whitman. Trevor Whitman is one of the best trainers. Right now, he's basically the Eddie Reynoso of MMA. His 2021 he was trainer of the year. Everybody won. He had the champions. Now his 2022 ain't looking so good. Gaethje lost. Rose lost. Usman lost. It's not looking good for Trevor Whitman. It's basically the same thing as Eddie Reynoso, but he told Usman, because at the end of that fourth round, Rocky was against the cage. Usman started letting his hands go, and Trevor Whitman, who's a striking coach, told him, hey, that's what I want to see. He's basically exhausted in there. He's done. And that gave Usman the extra confidence to go in there and trade with the striker. So instead of trying to pressure him and get back in that takedown, listen to the crowd, boo you a little bit more, he thought, okay, it's the fifth round. I'm good. We got a minute left. I'll just sit here. I'll box you out in the middle. But Usman doesn't fight going backwards. And as soon as he took one step backwards, Rocky was able to get off that feint with the jab, Just threw out the left hand, boom, kick up the middle. That's all she wrote.
So I mean, nobody can reign at the top forever. You know, at least it's idea. You know, Usman had a very good run. I heard
Mhm.
Dana White with an interesting interview with Kevin Aola. He said, yeah, of course, there's going to be a rematch. You know,
Yeah.
so you know, what do you think happens in the rematch? Is this because this was a rematch as well? All right, this was part
This was
two
a
of
rematch, yeah. So they're gonna do a rubber match.
trilogy.
They'll probably end up selling it in Wembley or because Dana's been hosting events at the O2 and they've been just, as they would say, madness, bruv. They've been crazy. He's got all these English fighters out there, so now he can do that and have somebody at the top of the bill besides, Tom Aspinall or somebody.
Sure.
He's got Meatball Molly, Patty Pimblett. They're gonna do crazy numbers, but the thing is, what Usman's gonna do, he's just gonna wrestle fuck him the whole time. Like that's what the fight's gonna be. If I'm Usman, I'm not standing up with you. I'm leaning you against the fence the whole time. I'm trying to take you down, chain wrestle, Khabib style,
Yeah.
the whole fight, and then just take the W and move on. Get your belt back. That's it. No chances. Taking nothing.
Yeah, man, it was interesting to see. You know, a very challenging evening for the Nigerian constituency, watching both Joshua and Usman suffer defeat. But like all resilient individuals in countries and things like that, hey, you bounce back from it. You know, AJ, like I said, as far as I'm concerned, there's still some boutique fights out there. I think as far as establishing a career for to become undisputed, I think that type of run is over. Usman, like you said, in a rematch, they'll have that opportunity. And hey, maybe these guys will even hook up, and exchange some tips. You know what I'm saying? As far as the build up and the presser, things going on of that nature, man.
Yeah, so to that, I got 2 points. One is that England needed that win with Rocky because they lost their first L of the night was in London. Michael Venom Page lost against Mike Perry in bare knuckle.
Mm.
That fight was crazy. I watched that. It went to draw, and then they do a sudden death 6th round. And Perry took that one. That was another good one because he used to train at my gym as well. So
Is that the
shout
same
out.
Mike Perry that was talking shit to Michael Jai White?
Yeah,
Okay.
that one, the 2% African. Yeah, that guy. He's a cool dude, just a crazy guy, you know. Um,
He must be from Florida.
yeah, he's from Central Florida over
Florida
here,
man, as
Yeah,
they say.
exactly. So, and Michael Venom Page took the L. Then Joshua took the L, so that's 0-2 for England for the night.
Mm.
And then Rocky Edwards had to come back and get the biggest win out of all of them. But as far as these boutique fights, something I didn't touch up on with the AJ, before we move on to some of those other fights, is AJ's next steps. I would like to see him fight a I don't want to say a tune-up fight, but a fight that's not like a huge magnitude fight. And he could do it against, a tune-up opponent, like what Fury was doing, or he could do it against somebody like Dubois, like Hrgovic. Those fights are there, and I think he wins those fights.
Yeah.
I wouldn't fight Joyce. That's a tougher fight, or a rematch against Parker. I wouldn't fight that.
I like the Hrgovic fight. I
I
actually
like
like
that.
that
I like
fight.
that fight too, but don't fight it so that you can take that IBF eliminator spot. I mean, take it so you have it, but use that. Let's say he comes back, Q2 summer of 2023. Now you have time for Deontay Wilder to come back in October. If he wins against what's his face, Nordic Nightmare, then
Yeah.
if he wins against him, you know what fight is getting set up next? The pay-per-view of him versus Andy.
Yeah.
Now, whoever wins that fight is perfectly set up for AJ at the end of 2023. Because you either have the trilogy with Ruiz coming off of a Wilder win would be huge, or Wilder versus AJ. We don't have to have heavyweight fights with a belt attached or for that. We can just have heavyweight fights. That's why we don't need a swan song from AJ. He doesn't need to retire. Same thing with Deontay. I'm so glad he's coming back.
Mm.
oh, he's done this and that. You don't have to be done, man. You can come back from losses and give us exciting, good fights. So that's the way I would like to see things play out. Boxing doesn't always work in the way I want it to, but do I sound crazy?
No, no, and I mean, listen, that's what we are hoping for. The main thing you said is one thing I admire about the UK fans is that their fighter takes a loss. They may ride him a little bit, may offer some criticism, but they don't dispose of him. Stateside, man, it's McDonald's. Like throw him away. He's on the value meal, G. You know what I'm saying?
Dude, yeah, it's
It's terrible in that
exactly.
regard.
Well, not to take it down a rabbit hole, but I feel like Floyd really kind of changed the model in the late 2000s, early teens, into, oh, you have to be undefeated. So then you see all these other American fighters, claim, oh, I got my O, especially Broner went hard on that. I still got my O.
Look
And
where I got
then
him.
exactly. So that's the thing. I feel like boxing, the model's finally shifting from you need to be undefeated to the quality of the fighter in the fights, and that I feel like that's the right direction to go with it.
And shout out to Danny Garcia for being ones to break that mold, because when you step up and you take on the best of your division or the division you wish to contend in, that's how you end up collecting those names. You know what I'm saying? And even when you get we could say, all right, damn, Danny went up against so and so. Danny went up against, and then it makes more sense to us. So shout out to Danny to being one of those guys, not the only, but definitely one of those guys, especially in the welterweight division, to kind of change the dynamic of that.
Yeah, I mean, especially you take that third loss against Earl. Does that mean that we just never want to see Danny Garcia fight again? No, we
No,
want to see him fight again.
and
But
look,
you see his reaction in his post fight, like how much pressure is put on him from those losses and whatnot, and it's unfair to the fighters. And to bring it back over to the UFC side of things, like, bro, people, they'll take two losses in a row and then the fans are hyped on these guys. You know what I mean? It's
yeah.
it's a different model. I would like to see it. I feel like both models can take things from each other and grow individually, but in a synergistic way as well. And that's what one of the things I would like to see the fan base take from the fan base of MMA.
Well, speaking of taking losses, this man hasn't lost yet. I want to get to this top rank card. Now, I like you, I had so much going on. I didn't get to it exactly, but even before then, Navarrete can wait. Hector Garcia. Hector Garcia, Dominican. A lot of people are not high on Dominican fighters
He
because of the
came out of
license.
nowhere, right?
Yo, after the win over Colbert, can we get this man his flowers?
Please, please, legitimate WBA champ now. I like that WBA's finally having to unify after the pressure from the ABC. But I'll tell you this: when he fought Colbert that night, I was working the corner of a fighter in Rock Hill, South Carolina, and I was paired up in the room with his coach. His coach is well connected in the boxing scene. Um, and he was telling me, he goes, yo, this guy Garcia is legit. He's like, I seen him train at the gym. I've held pads for him. He's legit. And I was like, really? Colbert's that guy. Everyone's very high on Colbert, and he put the thumps on Colbert. And to see him win this fight too, I wasn't surprised.
Yeah. And really out of nowhere for the 130-pound division. I like that. The dark horse, man. So I just want to make sure that Hector Garcia gets his flowers, that he's recognized, because now, you a name like Gutierrez, who's been in there with the wars with Alvarado, those guys were banging out for 130-pound supremacy. Now that Colbert's out of the way, Shakur is still there. You got Cordinia. You know what I'm saying? Who wants to get in there with Hector Garcia? And I don't want to see him, have to jump in deep waters, because I think he's already done, a type of, murderer's row to earn his respect. So I just want to make sure that people are aware of who he is and what division he's in, because I'm hoping that, win, lose, or draw. And please, don't nobody look to throw this man away. You know what I'm saying? Win, lose, or draw. This is what boxing is about. Stories like this.
Absolutely. I agree 100%. Especially when a guy comes out of nowhere and just shakes up the division. Love
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
So let's talk now we can get to Emmanuel Navarrete. And I didn't get to the top rank card fully. But Emmanuel Navarrete, he's fighting risky, yo. He's been getting hurt his last few fights. He got dropped this fight, but then he
Did he
comes
get
back.
dropped? I didn't see any of the top rank card.
Yeah,
I'm basically a fake fan, you know?
I had to go back and watch it. I didn't catch it live, but yeah, he ended up winning, I think, be a 5th round stoppage. So he came
Okay.
back with the thunder, but Navarrete has always been too vulnerable of a fighter for me. He's also a puncher. He's exciting, but at the featherweight division, again, you put him up there against some of them 130-pound guys out there. I'm not sure in what he does. He definitely don't
Like
want
Bob's
to.
been wanting him to.
Yeah, man. What you think about Navarrete just in general?
In general, I like him a lot, man. I was upset that I wasn't able to go to his fight when he fought here in Kissimmee. Kissimmee is just south of Orlando. For anybody that doesn't know their Central Florida geography, he fought Pitufo,
Yeah.
and that was the same night as the Usman versus Masvidal fight in Jacksonville, and I went to that, and just saw a crazy card with that. But I was like, damn, man, I really wanted to go to that top rank card in Kissimmee as well. That's the hard thing about being a fan of both, is that they conflict sometimes. But man, Navarrete, I mean, he impresses me with some of the shots he throws, especially that it's almost like a gazelle lead uppercut.
Yeah.
That shot is nice. I don't think it's something that I try to, find a way, like, how could I imitate that? I don't think my arms are long enough to be doing some stuff like that. But I don't know, man. I like him. I like him a lot. I don't think he needs to be going to 130 pounds.
Sure.
I think there's fights to make at 126, especially if they can make across the aisle fights. I don't know that I'm confident that they can make those fights though.
Now, my memory fails me just slightly, but Mark Maxillo just lost to Ray Vargas, right?
I'm not even sure.
Okay,
I didn't catch that.
Okay, so
That was for
Ray,
the WBC.
yeah,
Yeah,
so
yeah. That is, yeah.
I'm hoping that there's a unification in place somehow, or I think a fighter like Maxillo, you talk about that jumping gazelle type uppercut. Well, Maxillo like to jump around a little bit himself too. He'd be, fake Pacquiao jumping around. I'd like to see him contend against a Maxillo en route to a unification with Vargas. I don't know if the side of the street business screw that up, but it's just me being a fan and knowing, or at least thinking, what's the best fights out there, man.
Of course, we wish we could see some of these fights, but if wishes were fishes, we'd all be in the sea.
Man, and we smell like pussy.
So check this out. I want to touch up on one of the notes that you have here while we still have a little bit of time.
Sure.
I see that you put on here Atif Overton.
Yes.
You caught that fight?
Yes, I did.
Let me ask you, what did you think of his opponent?
I thought his opponent was pretty good. I don't know if his opponent was brought in there. I thought it was a more. This was not a showcase fight to me, is what I thought.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that Atif, they matched him. Now he's light heavyweight.
Yeah.
So to me, there's not a whole lot of depth around there other than the title holders in the division. But I thought that this was a risky fight.
Yeah.
For Atif, but he pulled through. Some people didn't like the decision. But there was some learning curves going on. But
what did you think of the decision?
I thought it was fair.
Yeah.
I thought it was a fair decision. Again, I don't want to feel.
And what backlash did you hear about it though?
No,
you thought some people thought that he got too many rounds.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. The reason why I ask is because his opponent is like one of my best friends.
Wow.
Like this guy was like my roommate, Burwell. Yeah, this guy like was at my wedding, like everything, So I know him quite well. We've done plenty of rounds sparring. He's given me black eyes, all that. So I know specifically that Overton was supposed to fight another fighter, Torres, and that pulled out. And then they just threw the check at Robbie. And he just drove down to Miami and took the fight. And that's kind of what he's done. If you look at his record, he's better than his record suggests, but That's kind of what he's done the past 3 fights. The fight before that, he fought Hot Sauce in the same kind of way, the one who just lost to Morrell.
Yeah.
And before that, he fought Sean Hemphill in the same way, and actually did pretty well against Hemphill. Didn't do quite well against Hot Sauce, but I thought he did. I mean, we're talking about a guy that just a couple weeks ago was his birthday. He was out in Miami, just
Chilling.
Miami.
Sure.
Yeah. So for him to do that and go 6 rounds and look the way he did, because he was landing good shots, backing him up in that last round,
Yeah.
I was impressed with what Robbie was able to do, given the circumstance and
Sure.
given the opponent as well, because Robbie's a natural middleweight.
See, that's a lot of insight right there. Again, I heard a lot about, people not necessarily thinking that there was it was a little lopsided decision. But speaking of lopsided, so we don't get caught off right now, give everybody your information before we close out of here, man.
Once again, IG Ray the Business, at Ray the Business, and then the Business TV on YouTube. I'm gonna be getting my podcast up and running again. I'm gonna do a new show, so I'll definitely have King Amin of Essex as my first guest on there.
Absolutely. Ladies and gentlemen, we out.
Thank you, bro. Appreciate it.
Salute, my brother. Thanks for joining me.
Of course, anytime.